made it.
Even a blind
So,
hog finds an acorn every once in a while.
yep. Blind squirrel finds the nut. Hog, wherever you're from, something's going to find what they're supposed to get once in a while. So I'm
Yep.
back in Maine, and Ryan is down in Virginia, and we made it work through the joys of technology. So welcome to episode 3. I always say it wrong. So what's the title of today's episode?
Today's necessities were yesterday's luxuries.
Yep. Yep. And basically, what we whine about and say we have to have today, they were grateful to have before. I mean, if the people that logged and worked in the forestry industry had the tools that we have today, 200 years ago, we probably wouldn't have trees to cut anymore. So, but it's just one of those deals. You get really used to what you have until you don't have it, or you take a look back at where you were 15 years ago, and all of a sudden you're a whole lot more fortunate than what you really think you are.
Well, and that's exactly right. I mean, it's easy to get bogged down in the negative and whatnot and be ungrateful for what you have now. But I mean, you look at the Bible and you look at the story of Lot's wife, it, you're not supposed to look back. Old relationships, old jobs, old this, that. You're not
Right.
supposed to look back. Move forward.
Yeah, it's hard not to dwell on the negative and all of that, but you got to do what you got to do. I mean, at the end of the day, I saw a post a couple of years ago, and I thought it was pretty inspirational and simple. And it's 4 words that'll fix anything, and just do it anyways. Doesn't matter if you're tired, just do it anyways. If you don't feel like doing it, just do it anyways. And if you just do it, it's done. You don't have to worry about it. So,
Yep. Yep. And I mean,
so
just keep moving forward. What really, in all honesty, what other option do you have?
well, if you don't move forward, you're going to go backwards in a big, quick hurry. So you got to keep trying to go forward. The minute you rest on your laurels, everybody else is going to pass you by. So,
But what Russ and I were talking about with today's, necessities or yesterday's luxuries, you look at the different aspects of our life. And since this is a forestry based podcast, we'll kind of keep it along those lines. But you take today's technology and whatnot. You've got the fancy grapple skidders with the heat and air cabs. You've got the processors. You've got knuckle booms. I mean, everything you're sitting in the lap of luxury.
yeah,
And but
you
you
figure,
look. I mean, 26 years ago when I entered the industry, you had what, 8 or 9 different manufacturers of skidders that I can remember, maybe more than that, but I know for sure 8. You had John Deere, Tiger Cat, Timberjack. Of course, that was right there at the time when John Deere was buying out Timberjack. But you had Franklin. You had Franklin, I think, had just bought out Tree Farmer not too long before that. But you had Caterpillar, you had Prentice was making a skidder at that time. You had Clark.
international.
Well, that would go back even further.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, just the last 25 years, different manufacturers got through. And, you know, 25 years ago, you could buy a brand new 540 G2 John Deere cable skidder for right about $100,000. And I think somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I want to say that the last of the 240s, the 240C Timberjacks, I think were right there in the upper 90s. So, pretty much neck and neck. And, I remember thinking, I was looking at one of those skidders in about 2004 or 5 and going, my gosh, how would I ever cash flow a $100,000 machine? You know,
Right.
and today, the smallest skidder that they make is a 640L, was it L2 or L3?
Yeah. Or that.
And
Yeah. Because the Tiger Cat's a little bigger than that, even. So,
yeah, and I think at that last show you and I were at, the salesman told me that just for the cable machine, not even the grapple, you're going to be looking at 350 or a little north of that. So $350,000. Holy smokes!
That's
I mean,
that's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to pay for a machine like that doing it with a cable.
yeah, but you know, you've seen my terrain now that you've been down here and logged in it. You know, you can run a grapple on a decent amount of it, but a whole lot of
Yeah.
it, you're not gonna do much with a grapple. You're still gonna have to have a cable of some sort.
Right. Well, we got some people commenting, so I'm going to say hello to a few people. We got Alexis Delafour checking in from France. Kevin Violet, K Train, as you guys know him from my
Yep.
YouTube channel,
Kevin.
he's here watching. We've got Rob V is checking in. Karsten McGee. We got Jonathan Williams, Down East Tree Firewood family. He's checking in, and Jacqueline Dower. So it's great to have you guys along. And Ryan was talking about what the skidders cost new. The sad part is that they're only about $20,000 less now. Some of those skidders 28 years later. It's crazy how some of this stuff holds their value, but if you look at a really good used quality machine, you're still looking 60,000 north if somebody has taken good care of it and it's ready to go to the woods.
Well, you take the 540 G3s. Oh, Dallas has just checked in. Hey, Dallas.
Uh-huh.
If you take the 540 G3s, you look, they quit making those in what was it, 2014 or 15? I saw
15, I
one
think it
in
was.
Forestry Trader, this past issue of Forestry Trader. They wanted it was a one owner machine with like a little over 5,000 hours, and they still wanted like $135,000 for it.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
that's, it's the same way with all the firewood equipment. I tell people you can't go wrong with a commercial log splitter because whatever you pay for it, you're really not going to lose any money should you decide you want to sell it. I mean, all of the commercial log splitters I've had, I've basically gotten the same thing I paid for them after I used them for 2 or 3 years.
well, and that's the thing, you know. So kind of where we're going with the yesterday or today's necessities or yesterday's luxuries. You know, you look at it, we're getting a lot more production out of this, especially if you're a fully mechanized crew. But are
Yeah.
you really sticking any more money in your pocket? If you
No,
talk to a
because
lot of the
you're
guys,
trapping the markets. At the end of the
yeah,
day, you're trapping the market.
yeah, what we've done is we've pushed, you know, so it's a double. Most things in life are a double-edged sword. With this, we've taken. Okay, so let's pick on a feller buncher for a minute. We've increased productivity, and we've no question about it. We've increased safety for the logger. I mean, all of us that have been in this industry any amount of time, almost all of us know somebody that's gotten killed on the job. I'm not talking about dying on the job of a heart attack or a stroke or something like that. I'm talking about killed in a brutal fashion from a tree, you know, blunt force trauma.
Yep.
So no question about it. A buncher has definitely increased safety and productivity. Uh-oh, he's
I had
abandoning
to let
ship.
I had to let the dog in. He was staring awful sad at the door, and the black flies are out now, so I didn't want him to get ate up.
I'm telling you, that's your dog. You just haven't come to
Yeah.
terms with him yet.
Well, whoever's dog
He
it is,
keeps
somebody's got
arguing.
to take care of it.
Russ keeps arguing with me that Mac is Amber's dog, his wife's dog. But I've told him, I said, no, you're his human. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. Can you
But
imagine
going,
what our grandparents would have thought if they had GPS and a fellow buncher and they could have known exactly how much timber they cut because when it went through the processor head, it measured it all for them?
well, I can remember when I was back 10 years ago when I was logging out in Idaho. One of the guys I was working for, I was skidding for him. He had a what was that? A 848H, and then he had gotten a couple of newer pieces of equipment. I mean, this guy was huge. He ran about 100 seasonal employees at the peak of logging season and had out there, they don't call it a crew, they call it a side. He had 8 or 10 logging sides and then a road building side. And I eventually got switched from the logging side to the road building side because he discovered I could also build road. But either way, they were just starting to really mess with the telematics at that point where, you know, they can tie in some guy sitting in an office in Iowa somewhere can remote into your skidder and go, oh, Russ is having his torque converter just slipped or something like that. And they're remoting into your skidder from a couple thousand miles away.
Yep. And derating them and setting them back so you're not damaging them, and telling you to go park it so they can come fix it. And we had some
But
equipment like that when I worked for the town, that when it went into regen, if you touched anything hydraulic on the machine, it would lock it until the service
mhm.
tech came with a computer to unlock it. So if you were in the middle of the street and it wanted to go into regen, you don't have a chance to pull it away. It was a really strange feature, and they hadn't upgraded the firmware yet, but that's just one of those ways that new technology doesn't necessarily help us. Sometimes it hinders us. But I got some more people that checked in too. We got Billy Bob's Wood has checked in. Rob V said Iron Mule with an exclamation mark. There's still some Iron Mules running around up here. Those are
Hey,
tough old machines.
Dallas, if you're still listening, you'll get a kick out of this. I was actually on the phone with Jeremy when this happened. It was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was coming northbound. I was between the tunnels, and right there around the chicken coop, I saw a going south. I was going northbound. It was going southbound. There was an old, and I mean old, Franklin 170 Forder. It's like a 130 or 170 Forder sitting up on a flatbed going southbound.
Yep.
No paint left on it, of course, but somebody was
Paint
getting it.
paint's just extra. It's all been rubbed off at that point if it's that old.
Right.
We got somebody
But you know,
checking in from Dallas, Texas. Ricky's checking in, and we got Larry from Louisiana checking in. So I guess
you know
we're
that
scattering around the country.
that old iron is still running and still getting the job done. If you look, you take, I don't care whether it's the 540 John Deere's, like the B's, C's, D's, the 230, 240 Timberjacks. They're still, at least in my area, the prices that you see for a decent unit, they're still selling for the same price that they were 20 years ago, and still pulling just as much wood. You look, all the mechanization, it's replaced men on the ground, but we've got fewer loggers now. So the most credible statistic I've seen on that, and people, if you listen to me long enough, you'll find out I do like some statistics. Russ is already giggling.
Some.
You know, you be quiet. Nobody likes you. The the average, the farmers make up what? I think it's like 2% of the United States population.
Yep.
Loggers make up half of 1%. That's it. So we've replaced a tremendous amount of forestry jobs with machines. But you look, a guy with a cable skidder and a saw in the right area, in the right market, he can still make a living.
Yep. Yep, for sure. Because a lot of people don't want the big equipment on their land either. So I
Well,
talked to a guy in Vermont at the logging show, and he has a mechanical crew, and he said they don't mind the fellow buncher, they don't mind the delimber, they don't mind the processor, but the minute he puts a grapple skidder on the property, game over. Take the
yep.
equipment, get out. So he's running an old 640 John Deere with over 30,000 frame hours on it, and he said he doesn't know how many engines have been through it. He said they lay it out so that they can grab it with cables and pull it all out to the delimber. But he said that's how he's able to stay working on the lots that none of these other guys can get, because they don't want the grapples on the ground.
Well, for a lot of the guys that, you and I both got Facebook presences, and for a lot of the guys that watch, my content on there, they know that I'm big into the low impact scene. Understand, I am not against conventional logging. It has a time and its place. Not against
Yep.
it a bit in the world. I've done it. I'm not against skidders. I will probably buy another skidder. In all honesty, I'll probably buy one within the next 12 months, because for certain applications, it makes sense. But I like my farm tractor setup that I log with, because I can be very surgical with that and very targeted. Uh, uh, so
I
somebody's
see that
asking me what
comment too.
tolls, yeah, what exit to skip the tolls on 77. If you're going northbound, get off there at the 28, and you can go up 19. But you can be very targeted with the setup that I've got. I've had guys sit there and say, "Oh, he must not be making much money because he's only pulling one stem at a time." You have to understand, fellas, that with some of the tracts of timber I'm cutting, even if I've got a skidder, I'm still only going to be pulling one stem at a time because either the timber's scattered or I'm going to tear up more going to pull out multiple stems.
Yep.
So I'm not gaining anything with a skidder in a lot of instances. And with the machine that I've got, I can sit there and sort, stack. I can load if I have to. I've got enough reach with that front end loader on that thing. I can load a pretty darn good sized log on a tandem truck if I have to.
Yeah, I
But
was
my
really
log bar
impressed
is
with
held
what the
separate.
forwarder would move. I mean, the more I watched the forwarder, I was amazed with what that would actually pick up and move comfortably.
So that I wasn't even counting having the forwarder on the job. With the forwarder, I can load tractor trailers.
Yep.
The forwarder, it's no problem for me to load a tractor trailer. It doesn't matter with that. I can load it. I Is there stuff too big for me to pick up? Sure. But Russ, that job that you and I moved to right before you went back up last week, where I was forwarding those logs for that Amish fella,
Yep.
there was some real thumper red oak in there that you and I didn't see that was buried under them piles.
I bet those are heavy.
Oh, son, I wished I'd have had you there filming that one. That'd have been a good one. I pulled out a thumper in there. It was it was like 21 or 22 foot long. So I've got 23 feet of reach with that forwarder, with that loader on my forwarder, a little over 23 feet.
Yep.
Uh, with that thing, once I had it on there, with that thing up against the headache rack, I just had enough to reach out past the end of the log a little bit. So it was about 22 foot. That thing, I got off and measured it. It was still like 22 inches inside the bark on the little end, and I was able to load that.
Yeah, that's a
Now,
heavy stick.
I'm not going to lie, I didn't just pick it up and sling it on there. I had to grab it. I had to think about it and be calculated about it. I had to pick up one end at a time and slide one end on the forwarder and then pick up, slide it around, manipulate it on there, but I did it. I
Yep.
can't do that. I've got one machine that will do all of this. So
So
it's
somebody
pretty.
said that with all of this low impact talk, somebody should have a show for that. And I think we're going to take care of that.
Yep, we've got one, the very first of its kind coming up in the nation. I worked with a show promoter, um, Lee Publications, and they do the Virginia Farm Show. One, I can't remember which one it is up in Pennsylvania, and then they do a construction expo up in New York. But they're putting on the very first of its kind, a low impact sustainable forestry expo here in Bland County, Virginia, September of this year. I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Ross, September 18th and 19th, I think. It's a Friday,
17th and
Saturday,
18th.
17th and 18th. Okay.
Yep.
It's a Friday, Saturday. It's a 2-day show. And it's going to be, there's going to be six segments, 30-minute segments for people that are interested in low impact, don't know what it is, want to know more, want to get into it, whatever. We're going to have 6 segments of 30 minutes each, 3 segments on each day where we have speakers in there. Russ and I'll be speaking on a couple of topics. And we've got some other speakers lined up. My log buyer, Jeremy Harless, will be on there. He'll be speaking. We're going to take you through everything from application and selection and availability of equipment for this type of setup to all the way to marketing your logs, how to buck them, how to merchandise, how to run, small firewood business, um, all the different aspects of this. So it'll be should be a pretty good show, but it'll be in Bland County at the fairgrounds in September.
And then Larry wants to know what the name of Ryan's channel is. So he's got a YouTube channel. He doesn't put a lot on his YouTube channel yet. It's Cold Springs Farm. And then you can find him under Ryan Willock on Facebook, and you can follow him there. He posts much more regularly there, much to his kicking and screaming that he doesn't really want to play with technology, but I'm helping that along as we go.
No,
But
let's be
we're
honest, you're
trying to
dragging me kicking and screaming against my better wishes.
but we're trying to put as much good equipment from all sides of forestry, firewood, and logging that we can in front of you guys to show you what your options are and to show you what we think are some of the better machines that are out there and available. There's so many choices. There's really not a bad choice no matter what you buy for equipment. What it
Yeah.
boils down to, and you'll know if you talk to myself or Ryan, we both like to talk, but we're going to ask you a pile of questions when you come looking for a machine because we want to try to help you as best we can. And even if it's a machine that I don't rep or sell for, or anything like that, we'll point you in the direction, because you can't go wrong with any of the machines out there. But if there's one that just plain and simple fits better for you, I don't want to take your money and put it towards something just because I get a commission or because I'm selling. I want you to have something that you're proud to have and have all of the right pieces to make your business work. Oh, so Down
I
East
did
Tree
not know
Firewood
Glenn
Family.
Steiner.
Glenn Steiner. I've heard that name before.
But when you talk about
Uh,
the equipment, like me personally, I have been in machinery sales before. I am no longer affiliated with any company at all. Um, I have no skin in the game. I get no kickbacks from anybody. I'm not sponsored by anybody currently, nothing of that nature. I mean, I want to see somebody getting the right machine because you know, and I had that mindset when I was in sales because it's not funny to put somebody in the wrong machine. That's you know,
no.
that's their potential livelihood and whatnot. You don't mess with that.
Yeah, it's a good way to really get somebody angry with you pretty quick, because at the end
Or
of the
get them
day,
hurt.
like Ryan said, we're making our living with this stuff. If you put somebody in too big or too small of a machine, like you said, you could get hurt, or it could hold your production back to the point that you're not profitable with what you're really trying to do. It's really important to do your homework. And I do have some affiliates and some people that I work with, so I do have a little skin in the game, but I've been very selective with who I work with because I want to be able to still have freedom to do what I'm doing. So anybody that I work with allows me to use anybody else's machine, run anybody else's stuff. I can sell other lines of equipment if I need to. And, my affiliates right now are Split Force Splitters, Cord King, and I work through sawsuppliers.com with an affiliate. Saw Suppliers, it gives you the option of all three brands of chainsaw. So I'm not really promoting one brand over the other right now at this point. And
Well,
with Cord King, my whole reason for them was they offer a lifetime split chamber warranty, and they'll offer you a free upgrade on a trade in within the first 12 months. So if you buy a machine that's too small, they'll give you your full purchase price back towards a bigger machine within that first 12 months. So if you didn't make the right decision and you went bar saw and you really should have went circle saw, you can trade in and make sure you get that right machine. And I just thought that that was really good at Cord King. I don't see anybody else out there offering a program like that.
and that speaks highly of them. I mean, you know, hanging out with you and the guys at Cord King back at Expo Richmond, I really came to like those guys. Really,
The
really top
dysfunctional
notch.
brothers,
Oh yeah, but it's awesome. I mean,
they're
I
great.
love it. I mean,
Yeah,
when I was in tractor sales, our store was an HR nightmare. You didn't come to work there if you didn't have thick skin, because buddy, if somebody found out that you couldn't take being picked at, you were screwed.
yeah. Then you had a target.
That's
Yeah.
right. But
So the low impact thing, it's not just tractors and forwarding trailers though.
Mhm.
So to kind of get back on that, you can still run a cable skidder and be low impact. But Ryan and I, our line of thinking, low impact, you need to be 9 ton or less, 18,000 pounds or less, somewhere in that
Yep.
range for your empty equipment. That's not talking when you're loaded, because if Ryan's got his tractor and forwarder loaded, he's over that by a good amount. But you're just empty rolling weight, because it helps to eliminate a lot of damage in the forest. You're not rutting things up, you're not making a big mess, the soil disturbance is lower. The forwarder saves a ton of soil disturbance, but a little cable skidder gets around in a 6 or 7 foot wide trail a lot of times if you really want to take your time and snake through. Whereas a big grapple machine, you need 12 to 14 feet to get some of those through. So
Yeah, 100%. And one big thing I want to make sure that's understood. Just because let's take the extreme. Let's go to the extreme ends. Let's say you've got a guy running a 40 horsepower compact tractor and a winch that's doing low impact logging, but he doesn't have a clue what he's doing. Okay. Or he just doesn't care. Right.
yeah, he
One,
can tear up
besides
a
the
bunch
safety.
too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Besides the safety issues, he can actually do more damage than a guy that's a careful, experienced operator that actually cares on say, a 30 or 35,000 pound machine.
Yep.
So just because you're using the whole low impact thing, It's also a mindset difference, and it's a different set of techniques that you're going to use versus what you use conventional. There's a lot of overlap, but there's a lot of difference. It's the difference between a surgeon's scalpel and a machete. It's chess versus checkers. You're not going to
No, I mean,
go
it was,
bull your way
it's
through.
just like the job that we were on last week with you. We were targeting a specific species. So we weren't in
Yeah.
there taking everything. So we had to really be careful with the other trees that were in the area because we may not be harvesting any of those trees. So you try to be as
Yep.
careful to the remaining timber as you can, and you're not wanting to scuff up trees, dragging them out. So we try to pick paths where we can get things out without disturbing the other trees. If you're doing conventional logging and you're doing the spider web or the crisscross cut and you're going through 100-acre piece and they lay it out with GPS, it looks like a spider web when you're done. You got your main skid trails, but the harvesters and the forwarders, they're going to reach out from those main skid trails and thin everything out and pull everything back to the middle. They're disturbing everything when they're in there. That's why you see a lot of times they'll go back and reseed or replant a lot of the main skid trails because of the amount of disturbance that they get when they're in their logging.
With it, when I time mine right, I have, when I have very little by comparison that I've got to go in there. Don't get me wrong, I still have BMP work on every track that best management practices for water quality. Everything we do is geared toward preservation of future timber stand and water quality. Not water quality is first, timber stand is, right there with it. So,
Yep.
because I do not want to create what they call here in Virginia, they call them hydraulic connections. I do not want to create pathways where I've drugged stuff and now water is going to follow that. Rainwater is going to follow that, take all that mud, sediment, and runoff into a stream. You know what I mean?
Yep.
We don't want that. So, and a lot of times when you close out a track, you've got to take a dozer back in there. And you've got to smooth up ruts, put water bars in, diversion ditches, and that sort of thing. Most of the time, I don't even have to take my excavator back in there. I can just close out a track with that blade on the back of the winch on the tractor itself. I have
Yep.
very, very, very little that I have to touch up. And when used in conjunction with that forwarder, which just because I have that forwarder doesn't mean I'm going to use it. I did a job a month and a half ago, or back in March. I didn't even take it out on that job. I could have used it on that job, but it didn't make sense. I didn't need it. So just because I have it doesn't mean I'm going to take it out and play with it. If you see me using that on a job, there's a reason for it. But when I do have that forwarder into play, my soil compaction, my soil disturbance is exceptionally minimal. I keep my skids very, very short and then forward it out. Like on this job that Russ and I just did together last week, week before last, whatever it was. The back part of that track that we were working on, now that track goes further back in there than that, but the back portion, you were about close to 3/4 of a mile to asphalt. I don't know if it was exactly 3/4, but it wasn't lacking it much. But it was
It was
about
a
a half a
ways.
mile. Yeah. And we could have drug the logs almost up to where we put the truck deck. But in Virginia, we cannot legally drag trees through a creek or stream. Okay. We can truck forward, we can create a forward and drive a truck or the forwarding trailer through if we set up a rocky, which here in the mountains, most of our streams are rocky bottom anyway, so it's really not much of an issue for us. But again, we want to preserve that water quality and the fish habitat. So we were able to use that forwarder and bring that right there to where just again, minimal disturbance.
I don't know if you guys can hear, but the dog's sawing it off. He's decided to lay down next to me and snore. I guess he is really entertained by us. But I see that Craig the Kilted Sawyer from Utah has hopped on, and we also have Josh and Janice Leach from Islesboro, Maine. And Rob V says you should mount a GoPro camera on the tractor for a day. Probably get some good footage just running the tractor through the woods.
That'll have to be when Russ is here because he's a technologically advanced one. Do you see this? Look, there's no hair
There's no hair. Yeah, dragging
because
them.
they drag.
So a lot of the low impact is a lot of the cutting technique that you use when you're in the woods too. It's not necessarily
Yeah,
just the equipment. You know, proper felling makes all the difference in timber stand improvement and eliminating damage in the timber stand as well. You're always going to have situations where you may have a tree that you just can't get to go the way you want to, and there's going to be some damage and some casualty. But for the most part, we're trying to preserve it when we go in there with a low impact mindset so that in 20 years, somebody's going to be able to come back in behind us and still have a fairly decent harvest should they decide to want to go back in and cut again.
I've had one track of timber that I've harvested. It's now been sold, and a different landowner owns it. But there was a track of timber that I had cut 3 times in 10 years, gently, and there was more. There's fewer trees per acre, but more board footage and higher quality board footage than when I started. And
Yep.
that track of timber I cut back in March. That's the second time I've been in on that track. That landowner has me targeting, certain species and whatnot when price and conditions are suitable for that. So I kind of come and go from that one. And if I was running a conventional setup, that would be a very expensive nightmare, both in terms of transporting the machinery in and then the amount of soil compaction and damage done to the residual
Yep.
stand. But with what I'm doing, I'm running radial tires, wide European low profile rubber tires on the tractor and the skidder. I mean, sorry,
Forward.
the forwarder. Yeah, yeah. And so that radial tire over bias ply, skidder tires are bias ply for one. So that radial tire has squish to it and has a lower, softer footprint, even if it's the same width tire. It's going to give you a lower profile footprint. I'm running Trailer Borg forestry tires up on the front of that. Michelin's on the rear of my tractor. My Michelin's, even though the tread's really good on those Michelin's are the original tires that came on that 2012 tractor. So they're getting dry rot and check. I won't wear the tires out due to tread. I will eventually be out somewhere and they're just going to go on me. So my tire
We got a
guy has
question,
got
and it's a
me.
good question, Ryan. Can
Okay.
you see that? So Ken says, how does a non-forestry landowner follow timber prices?
On timber prices. So how I would follow that's an excellent question. Uh, Best way is to develop a relationship, start to check around your community and find out what loggers have a good reputation or what foresters have a good reputation. If you go to the forestry department, pretty much in any state, any county you're at, they're going to, and this is a pet peeve of mine, I'll come right out and say it. Um, they don't mind stomping on me, so I don't have a problem stomping back. Ross is giggling because he knows what's coming. The first thing you're going to hear them say is, "Go find a licensed forester." Well, I can tell you, there's just as many crooked licensed foresters as there are crooked loggers. It's like anything else in life. What you need to do is educate yourself on timber, learn a bit about it, and I mean that's what Russ and I are here to help people with, so that you can make an informed decision. I spend an enormous amount of time with my landowners educating them on tree species, defects. I mean, I want them to have a good idea of why I'm making the decisions that I'm making. I want to be very, very transparent with them. So
Yep.
your best bet is to develop a good reputation. A good relationship. Sorry, with a logger, but you can go to different sawmills in your area and just get price sheets. Sometimes some of them will give them to you, some of them won't. But start finding out the historical data. The historical data that the forestry departments keep, generally, I have found is not the
Not
most
real
accurate.
accurate and close. No.
No, no, because in all honesty, and this is nothing against the forestry guys, but the guys with your county extension there, and there's like, we've got some really fantastic county extension foresters here that I work with routinely. They're awesome to work with. And they're very knowledgeable. But on their end, you have to understand those guys don't see a lot of the timber prices. They're not watching that because that's not the end that they deal with. You know, they're on
Yeah.
either the educational end or the in my case, the compliance end. They're coming back behind me and making sure I've done what I'm supposed to do for water quality and so on and so forth. So getting back to your question, that's that's a good way to find out what your timber prices are and start looking at them historically. Ask around. Somebody will know. Um, a lot of areas, I see one of the guys sits there, the Kilted Sawyer said, Craig says only a handful of loggers back here. Yeah, I mean, where I'm at, there's not many loggers left anymore. I mean, it's a dying breed, and that's one of Russ and ours goal with this is to bring more young people in. You know, we've been taught for years that you the only way for success is to go to college, get a degree, blah 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 blah. Now they're finding out, you know, most of the degrees just don't pay. You got a resurgence of people looking into the trades. Forestry is still a very viable one. But if, in my opinion, and that's, you know, that's what it is. It's my opinion. And but you can ask anybody that really knows me. One of my personal things is I do not take criticism from somebody I wouldn't take advice from. Okay. And part of that, if people are not laughing at you, you're probably not doing something right because people
Yep.
will only let you deviate so far from a societal norm before they start picking on you. And like in my case, I have people all the time tell me that I'm not a real logger, that I can't be making any money, and I'm not getting rich doing this. I'll tell you that right now, but I make a decent
We're,
living
we're,
and I'm feeding the family.
I'm sitting in an unfinished house still, so the firewood market's no better, boys and girls.
No, but this also ties back into, you know, the title of this of this episode, today's necessities or yesterday's luxuries. We think that we
Yep.
have to have a lot more than we do. And then you look, you're working to keep up payments. Can I buy this machinery? I can I could go out right now if I wanted to and buy some of this brand new machinery. You know, I could go out and buy it on credit like anybody else. Does it mean I should? No, absolutely not. If you've got 10 guys that are running this big iron telling you that they're not making any money at it, you need to think long and hard before you go buy that same type of machinery and try to copy what they're doing. Now, I
Yep.
have
But
those
then you got to
same
have a
guys.
little common sense too, because I've got some bigger logging companies up here that will tell everybody there's no money in the woods, and then you look as they buy $4 and $5 million worth of new equipment every other year to rotate out their stock. You're not going to spend $5 million to rotate out equipment if there's no profit or no return on that investment. But it's to scale, right? So some of these companies have been doing this for 100 years. They own so much land that they can't afford not to have that equipment, because if they had somebody else go in and cut it, they wouldn't make anything. So it's, it's kind of like creating a beast. And I tell everybody that with the firewood side of it, it'll get as big as you want it to get. The only thing that's going to hold you back from growing any bigger is your contentment to stay where you're at. And like Ryan
Yep.
said, we're conditioned to grow, 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 grow. There's got to come a point where you say, I'm happy where I'm at and I'm good. And a lot of guys can't find that spot, and they'll grow to the point that they can't feed that beast anymore and it just consumes them, and then they're done.
Well, so you look, I've been tracking my fuel usage, and this is, folks, I'm not bragging. I don't, anybody, truthfully,
He likes numbers too much. That's the problem.
yeah, I do. I like to know where I'm at. I like to track things so I really know what's going on, right? I don't like to take a guess with this. I mean, I'm feeding a family on this. For me, this is not a hobby. This is truly what I do.
Yep.
Um, I log and I farm. So I've had quite the older guys running bigger equipment. Typically, when they find out what I'm doing, they have one of two reactions. They either go, "Oh, you can't possibly make any money at that. Why are you doing that?" Or they go, "I bet you are sticking more money in your pocket than the rest of us."
Yep.
And it's like I told Russ today. He and I were having another conversation, and it's an old man told me one time, it's not making a living; it's living on what you make.
Got to
And
live
there's a
within your
lot of
means.
yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. Don't keep up with the Joneses. I'll tell you right now, when I was in tractor sales, the guy that came in, I got hurt in the woods and dislocated my ankle cutting timber. And the idiot doctor told me I just sprained it really bad. I went 6 weeks with a 50% dislocation. So it wound up taking me out of the woods for a couple of years on a full-time basis for it to heal up because it had been dislocated so long. But what I learned when I was in tractor sales, and I pretty much knew it beforehand from growing up, my family's multi-generations deep in farming. The guy that shows up in the brand new diesel dually wearing the designer jeans and whatnot, dude, you're lucky if you get him financed. Most likely
Yep.
he's going to be conditionally approved on credit score. But it's funny because all the young, inexperienced salesmen go flock after him. But you got the guy rolls in on the old beat up F-250 covered in cow crap, wearing bib overalls, looks homeless, smells like he just put a rectal prolapse back in a cow. That guy strokes a check for $100,000 tractors.
Yeah, he goes
He don't,
back and gets you a whole bunch of cash.
which is kind of problematic now because if it's over $10,000, you got to fill out a lot of paperwork on it, right?
Yeah, they don't
But
want it anymore.
no. So the point being, don't keep up with the Joneses. Appearances can be deceiving.
Yep.
And you determine what lifestyle you want. I mean, most of us just want to be comfortable and have time with our families. When I
Yeah.
had when I had a couple of logging crews, I had enough equipment we could run as two crews, but we usually ran as one. I did that for a couple of years, and I was blessed to have really good guys, but it wasn't fun anymore. I was constantly awake at night going, if the weather was crummy, I'm like, man, okay, not only do I have to have a paycheck, but these guys' families, they depend on me for their paycheck. Uh,
Right.
and then trying to keep enough timber and just just a lot of stress. I don't have that anymore.
Yeah, I had the same thing with my firewood business. We grew big and we got to the point where we were doing a couple thousand cord a year, and I had 4 or 5 or 6 guys depending on time of year, and we were doing earthwork and landscape work too. And it's the same thing. You got 4 or 5 or 6 families that are depending on you. There were lots of times that if we were waiting for checks to clear or waiting for jobs to finish, I would go without getting paid to make sure that my crew got paid. Because the minute you don't pay them, my grandfather always told me, and he had his own businesses all along growing up, my dad's father. He said, if you want to find out who's really there to help you, ask them if they mind to wait a week to get paid and watch their reaction. And there was one time I had to ask that question. There was only 2 guys that were really there to help because they said, "What? Hey, what's going on? Is there anything extra we can do? What do you need? What do we got to do to?" They wanted to help. The other guys, they flipped their lid. What do you mean I'm not getting paid? Well, this guy hasn't paid. The weather hasn't been good. We've got this broke down, that's broke down. I just don't have it. And, it was that eye opening moment that I was like, I never had these issues when it was just me and Gramp, because that was what it started with, was just me and Gramp. So I scaled back, and it's much less stressful, like Ryan said, to not have everybody depending. Could I go out and scale it again? I'd like to think that I know a little bit better now than I did before. And yeah, I think I probably could, and I could probably make it work. But I don't want the stress or the headache. I don't want the workman's comp. I don't want all the extra insurances. I don't want all the extra paperwork and headache that goes along with it.
Look at Carson's comment there on stumpage price sheets. Yes, that's an excellent
So,
point to bring up. And that's some of
yep.
the data that I was talking about that you can pull from the forestry departments. Keep in
Yeah, we have
mind,
that on the main website up here
yeah,
too. And it's usually 2 to 3 years behind too. So pay
yeah,
attention. So with the main program up here, they're 2 to 3 years behind on their reporting. So if you see prices, those are not current prices. So
And then, tremendous amount of landowners don't report in on that. So it's
no.
still, you've got to kind of take that with a grain of salt. And if you go to so as a landowner with a non-forestry background, if you go to, let's just say, a sawmill and you get a price sheet or a spec sheet from them, okay? I'll pick on Red Oak for a moment. Red Oak is pretty much a dog at the moment. It's trying to rally, but it's still a dog. It's in the toilet at the moment, price wise. But let's say you see the sawmill, their high price logs are say $700 a thousand board feet. And I don't really care I'm not going to get into Doyle versus International right now for the purpose of this, but let's say there's $700 a thousand board feet for the high grade saw log. That's 70 cents a foot. Okay. And then you'll see like the low grade saw log on there is say 20 cents a foot. Okay. People typically all they see is that big number, and there'll be a whole bunch of grades in between that, right? So 20, in some areas, a lot of mills will call their high grade saw log a grade log or a prime, and then they'll have like number one or a number two or a 1A. Um, a lot of mills and buyers, whatnot, now are going to what makes a lot more sense. It's a lot less confusing. A 4SC, which is four sides clear. In other words, there's four sides of the log have no defect. In other words, it's a nice clean log. That's your top price log. Does that mean it's going to make veneer? No, not necessarily, because there's other factors that go into veneer. But then you go to a three-sided log, which means one side has a defect in it and it's got three clear. Then you go to a 2, a 1, and then a 0. So we say like 0 to 2s, right? A lot of times, and you got to take what I'm telling you right now with a real grain of salt, because there's a lot of variance in this, okay? And this is where a good relationship with somebody with a very good reputation comes into play. A lot of times your timber is going to average out with the two sides, maybe a little better than the two side logs bring. So if you've got average to good timber and say I'm just throwing numbers out here. Do not take these numbers for gospel because I'm just pulling stuff off the top of my head at the moment. But let's say red oak is at 70 cents a foot for the four side clear for a 4SC log, and you've got average to better than average red oak, and you don't have the scarlet oak that we've got here. Okay, scarlet oak's the poor cousin to northern red. Realistically, you're probably going to come close to averaging. If the 2SC price is down around 40 or 50 cents a foot, that's probably pretty close to what you're going to average running it through. So by the time you take the 0 logs, which is the stuff up in the top that's got all the knots, what we call a lap log, it's a rough log. They usually use that for pallets or a lot of us. That's why I've got a firewood processor, because I'll be honest with you, those logs are not worth selling. They are so cheap, they are not worth selling. They're not even worth hauling in my market. If you've got a scrag mill near you, that may be different. Where I'm at, you're lucky if you can find a buyer for them right now. So I turn them into firewood. But if you average those logs with your higher grade logs, because your best log is usually your butt log, and then it's downhill from there in quality. Normally, there is exception to that. But if you go through and go, man, I've got 10 acres of a really nice, these trees are big. Okay, that's great. So they're big. You've got board footage in there. But if you don't have grade to go with it, you still don't have a whole lot. I'd rather have footage. I'd rather have grade than I would footage. And that's something that we'll get into later on. But in some of the podcasts later on, we'll go into depth in some of that stuff. But if you go into that thinking that because you got big trees and you see say 2 or 3 in that, let's say you got 100 merchantable trees there and you got 2 or 3 in there that, man, those are 4 clear. Those butts are 4 clear. I'm sitting on a gold mine. You're going to be disappointed because you're probably going to average right around that 2SC. So right around the 40, 50 cent mark.
Yeah. And that's the problem is a landowner will hear somebody that they may have had a miraculous stand of timber that was harvested and they get a giant paycheck. Those stands of timber are far few and pretty much non-existent anymore. If the land around you has been harvested and cut before, chances of having one of those lots is 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000 if you look at the lots around you. But they hear that Ryan had his land cut and he got a huge check, and I've got big trees, so I should get a huge check too. And when you have a forester or a logger come in and they say, "Well, we really don't see much there," they'll run you off thinking that you're trying to take advantage of them. And that's why it's
Yep.
good to have a good working relationship with an honest forester or an honest logger so that you can make sure that you're getting an honest answer and an evaluation on your timber before it's harvested. You can only harvest it one time. Once it's harvested, that's it.
Yeah, for that given tree. But if you go in there and you manage a timber stand correctly, so in my region of the country, and this holds true in a lot of the country, but I'm not gonna get into that. I'm gonna speak specifically to my region. If we go in and clear cut, and make no mistake, there is a time and a place for clear cut. If you've got absolute junk that's been high graded to death, you're better off in most instances going through there and clear cutting and let that forest come back uniformly. Okay.
Yep.
So there's very definitely a time and a place for that. It's just another tool in the toolbox. But if you've got a decent stand of timber and you manage it properly with low impact techniques and directional felling, not somebody you want somebody that's going in there and using hinges. Some of these guys, especially with the real high grade timber, and I'm not going to pick at anybody, but some of them will talk about, oh, we don't like to use a hinge. Yes, that's true that you can arguably increase the chance of cracking the log, but you have to weigh that against multiple things, such as take your pick, which is your preference. Safety,
Safety.
because
Safety.
cutting without hinges, I'll be honest with you, if you go look at OSHA, and I'm not necessarily a big fan of OSHA, but I don't think they're the be all end all. I disagree with them on a lot of stuff. But if you look at OSHA, I do have to agree with them 100% on timber falling safety on that. Um, if you're not in the hardwoods, if you're not using an open face with a bore cut, and there's an accident or fatality, somebody's going to be in big trouble because you're not permitted to use anything else, and because it's that much of a safety issue. They'll look at that stump, and they can look at that stump 3 or 4 years down the road and tell whether you bore cut at that or not. I can look at that stump and tell you. I can tell you where the timber cutter was standing. I can tell you where the tree went. I can tell you, oh, he held hard on this side or he didn't do on that side. You can tell what went on. Um, but you want to take care of your stand of timber, directional falling, and then the techniques. With that directional falling, I have a lot more control over the tree in avoiding and tearing up the residual stand. If you do that correctly, you can come into that stand every few years, potentially. Now, each stand is different. You have to understand that, but potentially you can come into that same stand of timber a couple of, 2, 3 times in a 10-year period, potentially. I've done it.
Yep. So the low impact goes not only to the forest and the equipment that you're using, but also the techniques and the equipment that you're using on yourself. You want to have as low impact on your body as possible too. And that's
Yep.
why you wear things like chaps and hard hats. And that's why you use your safety equipment. You have steel toe boots. We all want to get home to our families at the end of every given day. My grandfather is one of the old school guys that he does not believe in any of the safety gear. I wear my safety gear more often than not, and especially because of the presence that I have on social media now, I try to make it a point to wear it because we have lots of eyes watching. And it's important that we teach the younger generation, especially, that this stuff is here for a reason. It only takes one time without a hard hat on in the woods, and you may not be coming back out of the woods. That hard hat is designed to take the blow.
Russ, do you want to take that question from Rob there?
Is this the time of year where you start cutting and splitting firewood for fall and winter season? Yep. So most of your die-hard firewood guys will buy their wood in the winter time when the sap is the lowest, and they will cut all spring and summer, and they will put it ahead to season for fall. If you buy your wood in the winter, the sap content is the lowest. If you're buying wood in right now, when you go to split that wood, you're going to see the water run right out of it. The trees are pulling sap hard. They're trying to leaf out. Your bark's going to slip off. There's a right and a wrong time, but with a big firewood producer, you get what you get when you can get it because the markets are not good. But for a homeowner, now is the best time to be cutting and splitting your firewood. If you're cutting and splitting it now, I was always raised that if it was before Memorial Day, you're going to be fine for fall as long as you split and stack it so that it can dry. Don't throw it in a pile on the lawn and let the grass grow around it, but split it, stack it, and get it put up to dry.
And a lot of that comes to also what species you're splitting, how small your splits are. I mean, there's a lot of variability in that too.
Yep.
Uh,
Now, I'll ask Ryan because I notice he runs bigger firewood. Do you have people say that you can have firewood that's too dry down where you are? Because my grandfather harps about that all the time.
so yes, one of our really good customers, uh, she she picked at me a year before last and said, now she understands she's running an outdoor boiler. She said that the firewood I brought her was too seasoned, and could we bring her some green? And
Yep. So,
because she went through it fast in the boiler, and it was oak hickory mix, and she still went through a pretty good clip.
yeah,
But
Gramp likes to keep his wood on the greener side, and we grew up burning wood on the greener side because we had big, non-airtight plate steel stoves. So you needed to have that moisture to be able to help control the burn. Was it burning as hot as it could if you were burning seasoned wood? No, but the stoves were so big in comparison to the house. The windows were still open and the door was still open, and you were still 90 degrees in the house. So the wood stove was plenty big enough. But if you put seasoned wood in there, holy smokes, it was like lighting a rocket off in the basement.
well, if you look at the other end of the extreme, the European wood stoves, a lot of those now, they're I don't know if they're selling some of those in this country yet, but on my
They are,
travels to Europe,
unfortunately.
in my travels to Europe, I found that some of those stoves over there, they're burning pieces that are 30 centimeters, so approximately what's that, 10 inch roughly?
10
10,
inch.
10
Yep, 10-inch firewood. I've got three customers with those stoves. So one has
and
12-inch and the other two have 10-inch fireboxes.
they're wanting splits about the diameter of your wrist.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, it's
but
really
the flip
fun to
side,
make.
it has to be really, really seasoned. And then the other thing with it is that's some of the differences, but between the insulation they're putting in the housing and the efficiency on those wood stoves now, I'm told that those guys are burning the equivalent of one cord of our firewood for a full-time heating on about what would work out to be roughly a 1,500 square foot house in a climate similar to what Russ has got or what I've got right here. I don't get as much snow as Russ does, but I get, because of the elevation of where I'm at here in the mountains, we get somewhat similar temperatures. He's got a longer heating season than we do, but we still figure on 6 month heating season anyway, 6, 7 months, and it's they're going through one cord of wood in that time frame with those stoves.
Yeah, we can talk about wood stoves in another podcast too, because that's something that's definitely changing as we go. Even the outdoor boilers are changing, but we're wrapping up on our hour segment here. So to kind of recap what this whole thing has been about is one, the right equipment is what qualifies it as low impact. It doesn't necessarily have to be a tractor or a skidder or horses and buggies. It's the type of equipment and how you use it and the size.
And
Your
technique.
felling technique is what makes the biggest difference as far as residual timber stand and what that looks like when you're done. And then you need to use your safety equipment because we all need to get home at the end of the day. We've got families that are waiting on us and want to see us come home, at least most of the time. So, hope you guys enjoyed this. If you guys like this podcast, share it with your friends, get the word out. Within the next month or so, we will have this on Spotify and Apple Music and all of that stuff. I'm working on that on my end. Ryan's not the technology guy, and neither am I really, but I'm trying. And I have some really good friends that are helping me get that set up in the Woodhound community. So that's been really awesome. So if you like this
But
stuff, guys, share it, send it out, share all the posts from Brothers in the Woodlot on Facebook with your friends. Let's get the word out about this podcast and see how far we can reach. I mean, we made it to France and to just about every corner of the US tonight. So that's pretty good as far as I'm concerned. So what do we tell everybody, Ryan?
oh, do a little bit every day. It goes a long way, and
Helps one if you can. We'll see you guys on the next one. And thanks so much for stopping by, guys.
hey, thank y'all. We appreciate you.